This is John Paul Meducci, Dr. Speed Selling. This is Raging Verbalist number 276. For those of you who are keeping track, I'm glad that you're here. If you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're coming back, glad to have you back. We talk about a variety of topics, things that just enrage or rage me. Don't veer too much off into politics, mostly about business and life and things in general. And you can catch us every week on YouTube and also on our Facebook group, which is the Position to Win book, Position to Win book. With me, as always, to ask the questions that you would ask if you were sitting across from me, but she is sitting across from me virtually. Is the ever lovely Sandra. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing well, just had to use my new sonic toothbrush for the first time this morning, and woo, little different, So I'm sure I'll figure it out. So maybe we'll talk about that because that's a kind of a raging thing. So,
There
but
you
what are we
go.
talking about today?
We're talking about missed connections. So, what do you mean by missed connections?
So in so many ways, it used to be simple. Yeah, you'd ask people, "Oh, do I need to call you?" And they'd say, "Oh, yeah, give me a call in a few weeks or whatever it might be." But that doesn't happen as much today. We have so many different ways to communicate. If you look at all the different forms and facets of it and all of the things that you can do. You can text them, you can WhatsApp them, you name it, you can do it. Email them, do what we're doing now, which is a Zoom, and so you have all of these different ways to do it. And the reason why I say that it's misconnections is that more often than not, we have more ways to communicate and not a clear cut way of getting that message across. And if you're in business, it's all about delivering the message. So, how many ways can you do it? And how many ways can you figure out how to effectively do it? That's what we're raging about today.
And what modern methods of communication seem to have become unworkable?
Well, the big one is email, and email is just crazy. I absolutely am amazed at how email has evolved and devolved maybe into a pile of steaming. Well, we kind of know what that looks like. And just look at like Gmail. They've started to add more tabs, and it used to be your primary box, email box, and then you have your junk heap or whatever you want to call it, and all of that spam. But now we've got who knows how many tabs they're going to come up with, right? We got social, we've got offers, we've got, I mean, yikes. So it's become untenable in a lot of ways. And in fact, there are companies that make money just trying to figure out how to unravel your emails. I am always harken back to I was doing a turnaround for a bunch of men's clinics, and my personal email got out there to the world, and I ended up having to shut that email down. In fact, shut down that whole server because at the peak, and this is the white hat hacker that I ended up paying money to because everybody else told me they had a simple solution. They didn't. And we were clocking in at 35,000 emails a day to me. And about 80 to 90% were serious adult content about what we should be doing. And we'll leave it at that.
And has there been a communication method that did work, but has now been abandoned as technology has evolved?
Absolutely. The fax machine was my go-to. It was the new way to get to people. In fact, if you faxed something to somebody, you had a very high, we would use the phrase open rate today, but you had deliverability was really, really high, and it worked in an amazing way. And then, of course, first off, people started then doing, spam or crap faxes, and we got all of those. I don't know how many of those I got sent over the years. But more importantly, is that it just kind of went away. It just didn't make any more sense, even though, believe it or not, doctors' offices today, right now in 2025, are still using faxes. So, well, we faxed it over to the pharmacy, we faxed it over to the imaging center, and it's like, wow, are you kidding me? But that's where we are. But that was a communications method that I found very positive results from, and it is basically gone.
And how do you sift and sort all of these communication methods?
It starts by really understanding how to get in touch with that customer. In fact, I'm just trying to get my house painted now, and it's ironic because the best contractor that I found so far, I like him, probably going to go with him, is communicating with me entirely via text. And I think that's because of the age of husband and wife team, and that's her way of communicating. And it's pretty interesting because she sends detailed text. So I think the way to really sift and sort it is to figure out what's your means and ways to do this. And more importantly, is how do you keep all of this stuff organized? And that's where you end up with all of these silos of data. You've got contacts on your phone, you've got contacts in your email client, you've got contacts here, you got them here, there, and everywhere. So you've got to be very vigilant about that. And I think the best thing is to pick how you're going to communicate and then pick a precedence. Are you going to be an email person? Funny thing, I was talking to a really my best friend, and he's been in business, same business since 87. He's weathered the storms here and there. And he said to me, I just don't understand how to communicate to, and he mentioned, Gen Z, because he's now, they're coming into his market space. And I said, well, let's go through a quick test. And a quick test is he's an email guy. That's how he loves to communicate. So you have to figure out what you are capable of doing, but more importantly, how does that map into the customers that you're going to have? Now, all of that comes back down to a very simple thing, and that is how you are positioned in the marketplace. And if you're not quite sure how to make that leap of faith and get to where you need to go, well, I have the solution for you. That is, go pick up my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes 3 to 5 years to realize it. Position to win. Position. If you know what your position is in the market, how you communicate, and what that style is, and how those things work, great. That's a good thing to do. And that's exactly what the book is all about. Pick it up at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, wherever books are sold. You can go out and ask for it. You can also get it digitally. Actually, you can get it physically from us at positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. Or you can go out there and you can go get it with Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. And then, of course, pick up our book, Remote Work for a Better World. And that's what we're doing right now, which is we're working remotely and doing that. And of course, if you go to the positiontowinbook.com, you can always think of a Raging Verbalist mug. What is better than a Raging Verbalist mug? Nothing, really. I mean, it'll get you going every single morning. Boost the coffee, boost your caffeine, away you go. All right, what's next, Sandra?
All right, so let's pivot. So what is the solution to the problem?
The biggest place to start is looking at yourself and saying, how many different ways do you communicate? And when I ask clients this, especially coaching clients, it has become so much a part of how they work that they don't even kind of separate and look at it. If I do my own communication style, I would say that I am a phone person first. I love calling and talking to people on the phone. But again, lots of people don't do that. Next thing is that I'm a texting person. I've become a WhatsApp person. I use email. Now you figure out what your style is. And once you know what your style is, and that way you can communicate what your style is, not saying that everybody's going to follow along with you, but then this is what they will expect you're going to do. You can then build a strategy because you need a communication strategy. The best message undelivered is a message that never happened at all.
And then will AI help or hurt this?
Both. I think it's going to be a great thing because you can respond more rapidly. You can have some things figured out, and there's a lot of that blank page staring at it. I don't know how to really respond to something. But I have to say that you have to be aware that there are people out there who send emails or now sending emails by using AI and not even actually reading the email. And that's really dangerous, in my opinion, because remember, every time you send out anything that's a written piece of correspondence, I don't care if it's a text, I don't care if it's an email, whatever, what have you, that is a commitment in one way or another. We live in a highly litigious world. And if you think that, well, it wasn't in the contract, but I just sent it as a text or an email, that's going to be dragged in and somebody's going to slap you in the face with it. So AI will help you write things, but just remember that you're going to end up becoming a person who maybe not really saying what you want to say. And the other part is that, just write this down, less is more. AI is all about more is more is more is more is more. So it's not about multiplying the number of words. It's about saying it correctly, succinctly, and to the point.
And what's a concrete strategy for effective communication?
One of the biggest things that happens when somebody contacts you and you're engaged and you're talking to them and you're trying to persuade them, you're trying to get them to make a decision, you're trying to get them to be favorable to you and what you're doing, is that they call up with some questions. Never just refer people to frequently asked questions. I see that a lot with businesses I work with. Well, we've got a frequently asked questions part of our website. People can go find things there. Not a bad idea, except that most of the time the frequently asked questions section was written when they first put up the website. Nobody ever goes back to it. It's an orphan. And in fact, it may even contradict some of the things that you're doing today. Better for you to go out and build what I call a question bank. And that's beyond what we're going to talk about today. But I'm going to tell you that the concept of a question bank is every time you hear an interesting question, write it down. And then, and I like 3x5 cards because that's really simple and hard to screw up. And then flip the card over and say, what is the best answer or best three answers for that? And I think that that will allow you to become much more effective in how you answer questions for people. And then, of course, if you want to do an FAQ site, make sure you have somebody who's going to keep it up to date and have the best answers and not just some thing that you sat around a conference table and said, well, we got to write these, so let's knock them out.
And how can entrepreneurs, business owners, sales, and marketing people deal with this over communicated world?
Best way to do it is that, first off, AI is here to stay. Get really good with AI, but don't fall into the trap of, again, more is more is more. Charles Dickens, the very famous author, was paid by the word. So Dickens would figure out and calculate how many words he had to write in any given period of time to pay his bills. And he would do that. That is why some of the stuff that he has written, he's got some masterpieces, right? There's some really good stuff, some literature you go, wow. But you can find the other stuff that he was doing it just for the money. Make sure that you're figuring out how to get your best story, your best point, everything that you want to drop on them and get it to where you can answer it very quickly. People don't have enough time as it is. And in fact, what you want to do is you want to have impact. You want to make sure that they hear what you're saying. And more importantly, is that if you think they've heard it, but they ask a question and you say, well, I just covered that a little bit ago, you might as well say, listen, you were too stupid to pick up on it before, and I'm kind of annoyed about it. Better to answer it again, add more insight, layer it in, and move forward with that. The most important thing to remember is that all of business is communicating a message. Messaging is the most important thing that you can do on a regular basis if you're in sales or marketing. And never think that it is finished, because there may be a different way to say it, another way to say it, and of course, the best way to say it. And the best way to say it is that which gets people to say, I want to go out and do this, and I want to buy from you. And with that, for myself, John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and the ever lovely Sandra, this has been the Raging Verbalist number 276. Go out and communicate effectively and watch what you say, because everybody isn't listening. What they're really doing is they're looking for an answer to a question that maybe you haven't even thought about. So capture all that, have a great one, and make sure that you don't miss another connection and never miss the Raging Verbalist.